Good afternoon and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. I'm Maggie Williams, Director of the Institute of Politics here at Harvard. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Jay Newton Small. Jay is a correspondent for Time magazine. She has been on assignment for Time in Iran, Iraq, Jordan, the UAE, Ethiopia, Haiti, Indonesia, Australia, Canada, and Europe. Closer to home, she covered the 2008 presidential campaign, traveling with then presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Newton Small has covered the White House, Congress, and the 2012 Republican presidential campaign. Before joining Time, she was a reporter for Bloomberg News. It is our good fortune to have Jay Newton Small as a fellow at the Institute of Politics, where in addition to managing a very busy schedule, she is writing a book which has as its working title, Broad Influence. It is my honor to introduce Jay Newton Small.
So I'm really excited tonight to be here with my old friend Reggie Love, who I was just chatting with Reggie. I think I wrote the first profile of you ever in print in 2007. Yeah.
Right before Christmas.
Yeah, and it was the Time magazine in 2007 for Christmas, and you were so nervous about it.
Yeah.
You were like, "Don't write anything mean about me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said that I didn't want to take away. I was like, this campaign's not about me. This is about Barack Obama and the message. But I think Robert Gibbs. His point was it will make him look more. It will humanize the candidate.
Is that what Gibbs told you? That's how Gibbs sold it.
That's how he sold it. Because I was like, why is Jay keep bothering me about this writing this article?
Well, and I started it all because now you have an amazing book that's just come out. So let me introduce Reggie before we start all the banter. Reggie Love you were a basketball and a football star. At Duke.
Star. I played. I was on the team.
He was a star. He was totally a star. And after graduating from Duke, you were going to go to New York. You were kind of on your way up to New York, and he decided he would stop in Washington D.C. and intern, for the summer, and in this office of this new kind of senator from Illinois, named Barack Obama. And that internship ended up lasting a little bit longer than you thought.
Yeah. To be totally honest, I was playing football after college. I spent.
You did you were
3 months.
You were semi-pro, right? Or
with
you were
the
pro?
Packers, and
Yeah,
I spent
right.
a year with the Cowboys. And my mom had suggested that I take an accounting course my last year of college. And so when I'm in Dallas, I come up with this calculation of like how many snaps I would have to play in order to never have to work again. And when I finally calculated the number, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to make that many snaps, so I should look for a different career.
I love that.
Yeah.
So he starts looking for a different career. He decides, I'm going to go, into finance, make money, right? So you're on your way like up to like Goldman or something in New York.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of, and I don't know how many remember, this is like sort of the golden age of, iBanking then, which, it's 2005, 2006, and, I had classmates who were making just as much in their like annual bonuses as I was making like in a whole year playing football. And I was like, and they're going to make that for 30 years.
Yep.
Well, maybe not for 30, but they made it for a while.
So you're looking at a lot of money, money signs going up to New York. You're thinking, I'm going to make it big, make a lot of money for, and then you stop in Washington and you intern for Barack Obama, which does not, let's face it, pay well.
Yeah.
Does it pay at all?
So I was a staff assistant, and I don't know how many people here have worked in a member's office on the Hill.
So it's 2, 3.
2. So, and there's someone in the back. So in a congressional office, you've got like the member of Congress, you've got like a chief of staff and a senior advisor and director of scheduling, legislative director, legislative correspondent,
communications director,
communications assistant, speechwriter, and then there's like staff assistant, and then there's intern.
Yeah.
And so I was a staff assistant, and I think when I started, I made maybe $28,000 a year, and I lived in D.C., which is even, I don't know how that even worked out. I don't really. I don't think I was actually I must have been in the red. And I got there and things were, what I noticed was that there was something special about what was going on there. And I would go, and Lauren Kidwell probably remembers this, who's here, is that Senator Obama would have these town halls every Thursday. He and Dick Durbin would have a town hall, and people from Illinois would come and visit. And the line that he would always say that stuck with me was that, you know, I would rather do what's right for the American people than worry about being reelected. You know, it's like if I do the right thing and I don't get reelected, I'm fine with that. And I thought that was just like a very, it was a concept that I kind of thought never happened in politics. And I thought when I was in college, I studied political science. I wrote papers on how, you know, the correlation between dollars raised and who wins a presidential election or a senatorial election. And it was just a refreshing point of view. And so as a staff assistant, a lot of people say, well, how did you go from staff assistant to, you know, personal aide for the president? And it's like it's a long journey. And to be totally honest, you know, when people see Barack Obama today, they're like, oh my God, the 44th president, Air Force One, you know, there's all these things and the nuclear football. But, you know, in 2006, you know, I would imagine not many people, well, if you guys are from Boston, you probably did know who Barack Obama was because he gave that speech
here, yeah.
In 04. But
it sounded I mean, like, I remember covering that speech when I was here in 2004 for the convention, and I bumped into then State Senator Obama doing a walkthrough with Robert Gibbs. We keep mentioning he was the spokesman for the senator and then was spokesman for the White House spokesman when Obama won. And it was like 7 in the morning. We were doing a walkthrough in the convention center, and Obama was like, "Hey Jay," because we'd met each other in the Kerry campaign, and he was like, "Let's have breakfast. I'll give you a preview of my speech." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And so he gives me this preview of his speech, and I filed the story, and it's like exclusive to Bloomberg, this preview speech, and my editor was like, "This is so Pollyanna, like hokey. What is this? Red America, Blue America, United States of America." He never published it. Like, he refused to publish this, and he was like, "No one's going to believe this. It's so hokey."
Did you still have a job?
Like, as Obama's speaking, my editor emails me. He's like, you know this guy, huh? Like, but it's amazing to me that he does sound Pollyanna-ish, right? Like, when you hear him speak, and he sounded like back then, even in 2006, 2005, but people responded, right? You saw people respond.
Well, for me, it reminded me of sort of growing up in my church. It reminded me of my pastor in Charlotte, a small Baptist church, you know, and it goes up, you know, great cadence, great delivery, tons of passion, and you know, and I don't know how many of you guys go to church often, but it always seems like the message that he's speaking is like directed right at you. Mm-hmm. It's like, you need to participate. You need to go out and vote. You need to educate your friends. You need to like take part in what is a larger conversation that a lot of people aren't participating in. And so, no, it was definitely different. Mm-hmm. You know, a very different approach.
So you get inspired and you decide $28,000 a year is worth it. Living in the red is worth it. You're going to stay. You're going to sacrifice the job at Goldman.
Right. So Pete Rouse has kind of been my Sherpa for all intents and purposes.
He's a former senior advisor to the president.
And he was chief of staff to Tom Daschle when Tom Daschle was the Senate Majority Leader. He was chief of staff to Barack Obama in his Senate office. Mm-hmm. He was a senior advisor on the campaign. He was the chief of staff in the White House. I remember telling Pete, I said, you know, look, I may not want to stay very long. I said, maybe I'll stay 2 or 3 months. And I've been in D.C. for almost a decade. And really, to be totally honest, the first major challenge that I had wasn't a challenge at all. I remember the day Pete calls me and 3 other staff assistants into the senator's office. And it's like this amazing room. You know, it's big couch, big desk, 8x10 photo of Thurgood Marshall, Muhammad Ali's boxing gloves, and on a stand that are autographed. A photo with him and Nelson. It was a photo of him and Nelson Mandela. And you're sitting in this room, and you're like, man, this is where like, it happens. This is it.
Yeah.
So it's me and 3 other staff assistants and Pete Rouse. And, you know, you think you're about to, like, write a piece of legislation. And he goes, look, I got a problem. And we're all kind of looking at each other. And he goes, you know, we have a problem in the mailroom. And we all kind of look at each other and we're like, mailroom? Like, what possible problem could there be in the mailroom? Nothing interesting goes on in the mailroom. And, you know, I kind of, you know, I look at everyone, I volunteer, and I kind of raise my hand. I'm like, I'm happy to help you with this problem. And so the problem was very simple. So he gave, State Senator Barack Obama gave a great speech here in Boston in 2004. And people started writing him at the United States Senate before he was ever sworn in. So there was this whole pile of unanswered, unresponded to mail of almost 6 months.
Oh, God.
That needed to be sort of processed. And so I came up with just like a very systematic way of like using, you know, a service that sort of scanned documents, but at the Sergeant at Arms, an FTP site, and Adobe PDF and Excel, and sort of came up with a process to sort of digitize our mail system so that we could, you know, process it a little faster, manage it a little better, and to help get rid of this backlog. And it takes probably, you know, 2.5 months or 3 months, and, you know, a couple interns, and Pete thinks that I can like walk on water. He's like, you turn water into wine. This is like the most amazing thing ever. And I said, well, no, it's really, you know, it's really this FTP site and this, you know, in Excel and Adobe that did it. I just sort of put it together. And from that day forward, Pete kind of felt like there wasn't a problem that I couldn't solve. So, you know, if it was, you know, anything from database management to setting up the Bluetooth in his car to, you know, anything that had a battery, he felt like, you know, if you put Reggie on it, he'll solve it.
So you stay, and then obviously history starts to unravel in front of your eyes, right, or surpass before your eyes, where Senator Obama then runs for president.
Surprising.
Were you surprised?
I was surprised.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I never thought that I would have been working for a guy who was running for president. And it was, you know, he hadn't been in the Senate for, you know, even for a third of his term. So it seemed, it you know, it was a surprise to me.
Okay.
And I wasn't very certain that he was going to be able to get his wife to sign up for it either.
No?
No.
Any thoughts on Michelle?
Michelle Obama, what do you mean? She's like the most beautiful, stylish person that I know. And
I don't want to get you in trouble here.
Right. Well, I think it was funny. The president said it on Saturday night at the Correspondent Center. He goes, how is it that, you know, I've lost most of the dark hair on my head, and Michelle still looks great. She's untouched.
Smart thing for him to say.
Yeah.
So you decide to go over to the campaign with him. Was that a tough choice, or did you?
Yeah, that was actually a funny story. And so I was 23 at the time. I'd never worked on a presidential campaign. I had worked like on a small statewide race when I was a sophomore in college. And, you know, everyone's like, I want to be communications director, I want to be state director in Iowa, I want to be lead advance. And all of a sudden, one day, Pete brings me to the office and he goes, so what do you want to do in the campaign? And and this is where I think probably the smartest thing that I said, though at the time made me look really stupid. I said, you know, look, I don't really know what I would be good at. So why don't you make a suggestion to me, and I'll go out and I'll try to do it to the best of my ability. And if I'm awful at it, don't fire me. Just move me someplace else. And his suggestion was, he said, you should go on the road and you should handle stuff and be like the body guy. And I had no idea what a body guy was or what that meant. And to be totally honest, had I known at the time, I probably wouldn't have taken it, because if you would have told me that I was going to travel like 30 days a month and spend 115 days in Iowa and 89 in New Hampshire and 70 in Nevada, even though Nevada was kind of fun, I would, you know, it isn't necessarily the most appealing thing when you look at it in these little pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Now, I guess you could have ended up in some worse places. Or you could have been in Chicago. I know a lot of people spent time in D.C. But the travel's hard. The travel definitely was not easy.
So tell us, and I'm going to so Reggie, meanwhile, by the way, is an amazing photographer and sort of chronicled all of his travels with the president throughout the campaign, and you should pick up his book because it's great, and it has a lot of these photographs. So we're going to start, this is them on the campaign, on one of the little planes that they used to fly around in.
Yeah.
And, go ahead.
Oh, no. So this is early on, and I always think this is really a funny picture because, I think we flew on that plane from like New York to California, like no bathroom in it. Like you literally had to stop and refuel in Kansas on the way to California. That's like how sort of low budget the campaign was at the beginning. And a lot of people kind of always think, they're like, oh man, you and the president, you guys have this great relationship. You must be from Chicago. You must be from the South Side, or your parents must be friends, or must be boosters or donors. And, to be totally honest, I didn't know him, and I didn't know him from Adam when I came to work for him. And to be totally honest, the day that when I became like his personal aide, I think for probably the first 2 months of it, I think he felt like I was more of a nuisance than I was a value add. And I remember a couple of times when, we're in these like really tight quarters, and, I'm getting phone calls from everyone. He's supposed to be on a phone call right now, or he's supposed to be in a meeting, or these 5 people are waiting. Where is he at? He's late. He's not on time. And so I'm kind of nudging him along, like, sir, you got to go. X, Y, Z person is already there, and they've been waiting for 30 minutes. And one day he turns to me, he says to me, he goes, look, Reggie, you are closer to my daughter's age than you are mine. I'm the person running for president here. You are my assistant.
He does a good impression, right?
And he goes, you're going to have to chill out. And so a lot of the job for me was really learning how to, be a nuisance, but not be a nuisance.
So for those of you who don't know what a body man is, let's describe it a little bit. So you stand next to him in events, and you have a Sharpie at ready all the time, and you receive, when he gets things from people, you get those things, and you have to sort of deal with them.
You're kind of basically
you keep him on schedule.
Basically everything that he doesn't want to do, you basically do.
You hold his BlackBerry, you hold his iPhone,
So it's like everything from his wallet to his personal device to briefing books to making sure that his luggage gets from hotel to car to plane to car to hotel room, making sure that he eats 3 meals a day. If someone, a cousin or a friend or whomever wants to see him in Cleveland, you make sure that they're positioned or in the clutch or sitting in the audience in the right place, and he knows where they are, he knows who they are, and you take in all the extra stuff.
So President Obama wins, he becomes President Obama, and I skipped this photo.
Oh,
this
yeah,
is you guys just hanging out with Marvin.
Yeah. This photo is a really good photo, mainly because I think the story I always tell behind this is, if you look at this photo, you would say, there's the guy who's the president. There's a guy I don't know who, that's Marvin in the middle. Mm-hmm. And the thing that's really funny about it is that we're in a tent.
Yeah.
We're in a tent that has no chairs in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere in Virginia. And it's basically, I don't know, it's probably 10 days before the election in 2008. And I think...
I was probably with you guys at that point.
And I think the thing that's really important is that, while you're doing whatever it is you guys go off to do or what you're currently doing, like the people you're with and the people you're spending your time with, like you got to have a little bit of fun. Even if you're doing something that doesn't seem that interesting, or you're in a place that seems kind of obscure, or you're doing something that seems sort of redundant or repetitive, it's always good to be able to enjoy the people that you're with and to have a laugh because it makes the journey a little bit more bearable, a little easier.
When did the president discover your basketball skills?
I mean, I played at Duke. I'm sure you watched me play on TV or sit on the bench.
When did you guys first start playing?
Yeah. So one of the Matt Rodriguez, who was our state director in New Hampshire, had a great idea. He said, "Look, what we'll do is we'll have the candidate play basketball with local firefighters and police officers in their morning games, and he'll get to earn their respect, and ultimately they'll vote for them." Which is kind of ironic because we didn't win New Hampshire. And so what they decided to do, and you could also make the day a little bit longer, because your first public event really can't start before 8:30 or 9 because no one will really be there. So they would schedule a basketball game with local people in New Hampshire at like 6:30. So we get up at 6, go to the gym, play for an hour, get showered, and go. And so we were playing with some folks from the New Hampshire staff, and look, I was like 23 at the time. We were killing these guys. It was like, we were up 20 points, and
that's why you lost.
Right.
Why you lost New Hampshire? You just creamed them in basketball.
And there's one play where I'm like in my help side defense. I make a deflection. I run the ball down. I go up and I dunk the ball, and I run back down the court. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, "Look, Reggie, it's like, we want to win, but we want their support." I still think the president questions my jump shot and my shot selection. I remember when the Duke basketball team, so I played at Duke, and Duke wins a national championship in 2010. So the Blue Devils come down, Coach K in the Oval Office, Barack Obama in the Oval Office. I'm kind of giving them their briefing about, all right, you're going to turn left and you're going to turn right, and the remarks from the podium, and this is how the sequence is going to be. And the president kind of interrupts and he goes, "So, sometimes we're playing," he's saying this to Coach K, "sometimes when we're playing, Reggie will just take the craziest shot." and then Coach K kind of responds back. He goes, No, Reggie does not shoot on my team." It's like, that's your problem. So I think that, look, my game is, no one ever paid me to play basketball. I love the game, love to play, but I will say that was the thing that actually did build the bond and friendship between the president and I. I can remember the first night, it's a long day, and we were having a back and forth about the NBA playoffs, kind of like this time. It's like kind of this time of the year, and Chris Paul was playing for the New Orleans Hornets at the time, and Tony Parker was still in San Antonio, and I said, "Look, and I'm saying to him, I said, Chris Paul is the best point guard in the NBA. And he goes, "No, Chris Paul's not that good." And I said, "No, look, I played against him in college. He's fast with the ball. He shoots great. He's just a great all-around player, best point guard in the NBA." And, I look at my email one night. It's about 12:30, and it's like Barack Obama. And I'm like, this is going to be bad. He's either something's missing, or something's wrong, or he doesn't have something. So I open it up, and it's Tony Parker's stat line. And and I reply back with Chris Paul's stat line, and I go, pretty good, but I still think CP is better. And that was our first non-work related communication, where we were just not talking about scheduling or talking points or logistics or why he was doing something that he didn't think that he needed to be doing.
So I was always surprised when I watched him play basketball during the campaign. What a trash talker he is. I mean, he really talks trash, and he'll haze everybody on the team. Is he just these hyper competitive?
I don't know, I think he's a guy.
Yeah, but you don't see Axe talking trash to him when he plays basketball.
Well, have you seen Axelrod play?
Yeah, he's not good.
No, he definitely is a trash talker, and there's a great story in the book that I write, and it's still one of the funniest days of my life. We played a game in Iowa, and we flew to Wisconsin later in the day, and the president or the candidate is about to go on stage. And he's standing off stage. He's being introduced by this woman who's a local person who's sort of talking about why she's supporting the candidate. And I say to him, he's standing there holding the basketball, and I say, "So, sir, you know that's a girls' basketball?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know it's a girls' basketball." And he throws it down the hall to Marvin, that's a tall guy standing there. And Marvin's like 6'8".
Marvin's his trip director, just to give you, like, he travels a lot with the president.
He throws the ball to Marvin, and he says to Marvin, he goes, "Hey, man, maybe this will help you with your game." And Marvin, he goes, "Look, and he says, I'll take trash talking from Reggie, but I won't take trash talking from you, sir." And he goes on and on, and he says to the president, he says to the candidate, he goes, "Well, at least I didn't get my shot blocked by a 14-year-old.
Oh.
And the candidate goes, "He was 15. And it was his nephew, Avery. And the candidate's about to go back at Marvin, and then the curtains open, the music comes on, they're like, "And the next president of the United States, Barack Obama." And in the middle of this heated trash talking moment, he's announced the stage. And he comes off stage, and he says to me, "The whole time I was giving that speech, I was really fired up at Marvin."
So we redefined fired up and ready to go.
Yeah. Maybe not said fired up. He may have used another word.
Because he also swears a lot.
I don't know.
I've seen him swear. So you decide you love it so much, you're gonna go to the White House with the president, and you're gonna keep doing it.
No, I didn't think I was going to go to the White House at all.
No?
No, man. The campaign was so long.
It was
you
2
were on
years.
It.
Yeah,
It was 2 years.
Yeah. 23 months, actually.
And I had taken literally 2 months after, or 2 weeks after the election, I took the LSATs the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So I was going to go take the spring off, go to law school, and that was going to be it. And shortly after the election in 2008, he's going to D.C. to meet President Bush. It's President-elect meeting President-elect Obama, meeting President-elect Bush in D.C. And on the flight over, we're talking sports, and my good friend Chris Duhon had gotten a new contract with the New York Knicks, and he'd had a good game. And he comes over to me, and it's on the plane. He goes, "Man," he said, "Man, Chris had a great game last night. I guess he really is worth all that money. I should probably take back all those mean things I said about him." And he kind of says to me, "So you're coming with me on this journey? You're coming with me on this, right?" Talking about the White House, and and I'd already prepared myself, and I was not gonna go because I never really wanted to work in government. My dad worked for Social Security, and I was like, I really don't want to work for the man. That didn't sound cool. And before I even realize what happens, I say, "Yeah, sure, I'll come for 2 years." And I'm like, "Who said that?" And so I guess that's what happens. Leader of the free world asks you to come, you go. And I stayed for 3 years, and it was probably the best experiences and the best life lessons that I've ever learned. And I think Jay's scrolling through some of these photos, and this is, I would tell a different story about this, but this is a very great setup here. This is the Rose Garden.
Press conference.
And no, this is a bill signing.
The bill signing, yeah.
This is a bill signing, and
we're in the back.
You're in the back, and I'm going out to check everything before I put the remarks on the podium. And so if anything was ever wrong at any of these events, he would never go to the press person or the grounds crew. He would always say, "Reggie, why wasn't this right?" And so the thing that I always learned was that the right answer was always, "Yes, sir," and we'll get that right next time, because
don't debate him.
Don't debate him. And it's really easy to say to blame somebody else, because usually there's no scenario that just involves one person. like, especially when you're in these organizations, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who are doing important jobs, and sometimes they get it right and sometimes they don't. But ultimately, in my position was basically to take responsibility for anything that seemed to go wrong.
Which happened a fair amount.
Yeah, hey.
Good thing you weren't there when Obamacare happened. Sorry.
No, I was there.
You were there?
Yeah.
Wow. Wait, when did you leave? So how long? I thought you stayed. I you
left in December of 2011.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I meant when it went implementation. When it
right,
ran
right,
sideways
right.
during implementation.
I was gone for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gone for that. That was unfortunate.
Yeah. Because I was.
The website.
Yeah, the website. Exactly. Right. Exactly. So, do you have a story about this one, or should we?
Yeah. So this is actually a very interesting story here. So this was the first state visit, and it was preparation for it, and it's really a lot of work. I mean, for almost a month, we had meetings and walkthroughs and all different sort of event preparation
protocol,
sessions. Protocol. Yeah. And to be totally honest, I think we did an amazing job, except one thing. The headline for the event was, party crashers crashed.
Oh, the Salahis crashed the party.
State dinner. And it was really an unfortunate thing because everyone did an amazing job. A lot of work went into it. 99% executed without a flaw. And the one thing that goes wrong actually ends up being the thing that is actually still covered today and gets covered in India. And I think the main story behind it is that, like, there's a lot of work and a lot of preparation that goes into not only for him, but all the people who work for him, him being the president. And I think the main takeaway for you guys should be that there'll be a lot of moments where you're going to do a lot of things and put in a lot of time, and you're not going to get the outcome that you hope to have. And even when you don't get the outcome that you hope for, you still have to put in the time and put in the effort to continue to go on.
So now you've left in 2011. I know you went to Wharton, and you're doing
Harvard of the South. Basketball's not as good there.
And you're doing environmental consulting, right? Like.
No, I work for a financial holding company called Transatlantic, and we're buying medium-sized companies that supply equipment and services to utility companies and oil and gas companies.
But you remain friends.
He was lucky enough to invite me to, that was USA versus Brazil. It was a preseason, or it was a exhibition game at the Verizon Center. And it was funny because he went back to talk to Coach K and the team before the game, and the next time I saw Coach K, he says if he wasn't the president, there's no way he would come in to talk to my team at halftime, especially because it was like a tie game. I think this is a great photo, and I was lucky enough for him to even invite me to go with, and I think you have to enjoy the things that you do, and he definitely. I think the funniest part about that is I got like 10 emails from people who work at Nike being like, "Why is he wearing all this Under Armour gear on national television? He should be wearing Nikes."
I would imagine you got a lot of those.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open up to questions in a minute, and just so you guys know, that you line up the microphones, which are around up here, to ask questions, and you need to keep it to at least 2 minutes per question, and you have to identify yourself, please, and your question must end with a question mark, which are the rules of Harvard. And in the meantime, I'm going to kick off the question and answer session with a question that was planted by David Axelrod when I saw him last week. And I said, Ax, I'm going to be interviewing Reggie for the forum. What should I ask Reggie? And Ax said to ask you about a story involving Hillary Clinton. And I kind of remember this, but we differed on our recollection. I remember this being at the Sioux City Airport in Iowa. He remembers it being in the New York City Airport. But it was after, so the story is Billy Shaheen, who is Jean Shaheen's husband, at some point said something incredibly insulting to the president. He sort of hinted that the president might have dealt drugs when he was at Columbia University. He immediately apologized, resigned from the campaign. The Clinton campaign condemned his remarks, and Hillary said that the next time she saw Barack Obama, wherever it was, she would personally apologize. And so they're on the tarmac. Was it Sioux City or was it New York?
It's D.C.
It was in D.C. We were both wrong. Okay, so both Axe and I misremember this.
DCA.
And so you're in, and Axe is there, and both staffs are kind of in the terminal, and they're seeing the candidates meet on the tarmac. But the only people who could actually hear what the candidates said to each other were Huma, who's Hillary's body person, and Reggie. And so Axe said to ask you, because apparently the legend goes that things got incredibly heated. It looked like they were screaming at each other. So Axe,
Looks like. Yeah.
So Axe said to ask you, to put you on the spot and say, what exactly was said that day?
I think so we're in DCA, in Washington, D.C., and to Jay's point, there was, some comments that were made about the candidate at the time that were a little unsavory, and so he addressed it to her, and she kind of said, "Look, I had no idea, and that he was going to do that, and I'm really sorry about it." And I think for the most part, I think at that point in time, I think maybe someone felt that the apology wasn't sincere enough. And look, and I think this is your brand, and these comments that are made, have a huge impact. And like your kids read this stuff, and your wife reads this stuff. And so I think it's one thing to differ on your policy in Iraq, but it's another thing to have these libel things being said about you.
And how did she take the request for an apology, more of an apology?
Yeah, she wasn't too thrilled with it. She was definitely very animated, to say the least. It was kind of awkward because I don't know if you guys have ever been around when your parents are fighting and you're there, but you probably shouldn't be there. But they're already kind of at it, and you're just like, maybe I shouldn't really be paying attention to this. So you're kind of trying to act like you're not watching it.
So you and Huma are
like, yeah. So man, I was like, man, that was a great event at the convention center, huh? She was like, yeah, this is getting serious. She's like, should we break this up?
So now I'm gonna open it up to questions, and yeah.
Hi, I'm Ben Bolger, and I just have a question about dealing with challenging experiences with the president. For example, I think once you might have misplaced his briefcase temporarily. I'm just wondering if you could kind of give us a good story like that, and how did you, everyone's human, how did you resolve a setback that you had with the president, and how did it work out?
Look, I mean, I start sweating thinking about that day, and so that's a great question, Ben. And so when I tell the story, sort of my first really big mistake was the day before the South Carolina debate, which was one of the first debates in the primary. I leave, his bag gets left in the car in Florida, and I don't realize it until we're speeding down the tarmac to take off. So I call everyone I can. I'm emailing people. Hey, here's the bag. How can we get it to South Carolina? Can we FedEx it? Can someone drive it? Is anyone flying? What are all the options out there? And then so part one is just trying to solve the problem, right? Now, the real solution to the problem would have been to not have left the bag there at all. And so then the other part of it is when we land, he says, hey, Reggie, where's my bag? And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, I think the bag will be to the hotel tonight before we get there. I think. I'm not 100. Something could happen, the plane get delayed, or something so I can tell him the truth and say, look, I left your bag in Miami. Or I can say, yeah, no, it's in the other car. I'll grab it when we get to the hotel tonight. And I went with a version of something in between, which is it's en route. And
Don't ask.
and he says, well, what do you mean it's en route? I said, well, it's en route to the hotel from Florida. And he goes, well, why is it not with me here? And I go, well, you know, we got left in the car, and I've solved it. It's going to be there. And later that day, we're in the campaign headquarters in Columbia, and he kind of asked one of the staff members for a room, and he goes, Reggie, come in, I'm going to talk to you. He sits me down, and he kind of says, look, you know, you have one job to do. And if you're not up for doing your job, then it's going to make it really hard for me to do my job. And I'm sure there are a lot of other people out there that would love to have the job that you have. And so, I go think to myself, say, yes, sir. Like, this is a terrible mistake. I'll never make it again. I never did. But no, I mean, there are tons of, I have a whole list of mistakes that were made. Everything from, pages of a speech being left out of the binder to teleprompter operators like falling asleep during the middle of a speech, to, the teleprompter glass breaking, to no rain sites for events. We had this awful day, and
was that the one in Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I was there. That was terrible.
They canceled the World Series the same day, and we had an event outside.
It was pouring rain. I mean, like teeming, and it was terrible.
And he wakes up in the morning and he goes, "So Reggie, what's the rain site for this?"
It's no rain site.
And I'm like, "Well, there were no. I'm trying to explain it to him this elegant way in which there's no rain site, but we have a really good reason as to why there's no rain site, and whatever that reason we thought was not good enough for him." And so he doesn't eat breakfast. He doesn't put on a suit. He doesn't pack his bag. We get in the car. We drive straight to the event site because people are outside waiting, and they're waiting in the rain. And it's cold and it's freezing. It's like a week before Election Day.
Really cold.
And he's like, people are going to be sick with pneumonia. They won't be able to go vote. So it's pouring down rain. It's freezing cold. He addresses the crowd. You can't even see.
Which, keep in mind, you're not allowed to have an umbrella because Secret Service.
No umbrellas.
No umbrellas, right?
No umbrellas.
So it's pouring rain and there's no protection.
Yeah.
And he chose to go out without an umbrella too, I think, in solidarity.
He went out without an umbrella. And during the remarks, I walk into the hold room. Hold room's nice and warm and dry. And I kind of say to guys, I'm like, look, man, when he gets off the stage, man, you guys don't want to look dry.
It's so true. Do you think he's changed since you knowing him as a senator and knowing him as president? How different is he?
I think there are obviously the physical differences, and I think the job takes a toll on you, and I think too that the job takes a toll mainly because when things kind of get to his desk, they're kind of the options are bad and worse, right? And so I don't think as a person, I don't think I think his sense of humor is still the same. I think the way he interacts with people is still the same. I think he's definitely grown in a lot to being president, and I think he's always had an immense amount of respect for the office. But I do think that, there is definitely growth because you're doing a lot of things for the first time. How many, arrival ceremonies have you been to when you are a junior senator from Illinois? How many, multi-country negotiations have you, been through, as a junior senator from Illinois? So I think you definitely grow and learn and evolve, and I think he has. But I don't think at his core, I don't think he's changed.
Up here, you've been waiting.
Hi, Reggie. Thank you so much for coming to share with us. My name is Amandla. I'm a joint degree student between the Business School and the Kennedy School.
Awesome.
I think it's so fantastic to have the president humanized in a way that I think is sometimes very difficult when we think about the presidency as a high office. I'm curious how the president processes really difficult issues that he has to take a stance on. What comes most immediately to mind is what's happening in Baltimore now, where the president has to represent all of America, but is a black man in America today. How does he process what he has to say at times like this and balance those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very, well, I'll break that into two. And Amanda, that's a great question as well. And what are you focusing on in your MBA?
So, general MBA here
General
at
MBA.
HBS,
Okay.
but I'm from Kenya, so I'm really interested in development.
You're from Kenya?
Mhm.
Nairobi?
From Nairobi.
Oh,
you
wow.
went. You went with the president, right? When he went as a candidate.
I did not go on that trip.
didn't go on
When
that trip?
he and Michelle went and they got the
Yeah.
HIV test.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't
That
go.
was a great trip.
Yeah, you were there.
yeah.
But to her question, though, I think two parts of it. I think one, as a whole, and I mean, he deals with a lot of tough decisions all the time. And then there's like this whole other thing, which is Baltimore and race in the country. And I think for, very tough decisions, I think he does a very good job of taking in a lot of data and a lot of points of views. He will listen to everyone's point of view on an issue, regardless if it's contradictory to his or not. And I think that that's very different from some leadership styles. I think some people who have very tough decisions want to hear all the supporting reasons why the thing that they're going to decide is like the right decision. But I think he does a very good job of saying, hey, well, what are the counterpoints to this, and how hard can they be broken down, and is there a middle ground? And sometimes he even already has his mind already made up, but he still has the wherewithal to listen. I remember a day when they were trying to take a decision on the auto bailout, and he asked like a junior staffer in the room who was probably like 27 at the time. He says, hey, what do you think? And the guy was like, it was Brian Deese.
I was gonna say that Brian was 31 running the auto bailout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He ran the whole auto bailout.
yeah, and so, and I think he just does a really good job of bringing in a lot of different perspectives. In terms of Baltimore as a whole, I think his comments have been spot on. I think his perspective and his message probably is tailored a little more from his own personal experience, as he is a black man who grew up here in the United States, and I think he has a little more sort of personal sort of experience alongside of it, more than probably a lot of the other people who are senior advisors in the administration. But I think, look, it's a difficult time where we are today, but I think he also believes that we've come a very long way. Technology today affords us the ability for people in Boston to feel like they know what's going on, like on the grounds in Baltimore, right? Like, and not like 3 or 4 days later, like instantaneously. And I think that these incidences are a good opportunity for us to grow as a country. And I think he's done a lot of interesting things around looking at the different processes and how police officers are engaging with potential suspects, the training that they go through, all the different protocols that they're taking. I think they've done a really good job sort of analyzing it. And they've had the opportunity because of Ferguson, because of what happened in New York City, there at Garner, because of Trayvon Martin. And even though those are hard things to swallow and to see, I think he's been out in front, sort of trying to figure out how can we make things a little bit better. Now, granted, like trying to make things better for tomorrow does not necessarily help us feel better about where we are today.
I'm John Clark Levin. I'm a second-year Master in Public Policy student here at the Kennedy School. I'm wondering, some presidents have been very guarded, even with their intimate staff members, while others let their hair down more. FDR was famously very reserved even around people he was close with, whereas Lyndon Johnson infamously met with people while he was in the bathroom. So I'm wondering, from your experience of President Obama, what were the ways in which he could let his hair down around you and other close staff members, and what were the ways maybe he was private and guarded even around you?
Well, I'm definitely pretty certain he didn't have any bathroom meetings. But I think I saw that on an episode of House of Cards, though, too, which is really cool.
Don't give him ideas.
I think how does he interact on a personal level with the staff? I think, he has like a pretty good sense for, because his daughters are relatively young, so he has a pretty good sense of like pop culture and entertainment, and he watches and reads like everything. So, he'll have a conversation about, what he thought, the last episode of Mad Men really meant, or he'll talk about, sports with Dennis McDonough, or he'll talk about, whatever is out there. He consumes like so much stuff that, like, I'm always surprised. I remember, like, one day, like, I got an email from him at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and he said, like,
This is in the White House or after?
this is in the White House. In the White House, he's president of the United States,
And you were there too, or you left?
and I'm working there.
Okay.
And he said, what's up with these Buried Life guys? Like, and the Buried Life were these guys on MTV who were going around they had like a bucket list of all the things they wanted to do. And I don't know, like, I guess he's watching the Buried Life at like whatever time, and he sends his email. And I said to him, look, your team decided that it wasn't worth you like meeting with them or bringing them by. And he goes, well, I said, let's bring them by anyway. I don't care. He's like, I'm president. I want to bring them by. So he emails me this. This is like a middle of the night exchange and so, so that's like a small example that I can remember in which, and I don't know if you guys even remember this show or not, but like he's just, he consumes a lot, and he's very, engaged with people around, issues that are not just about policy. Media, entertainment, sports.
A lot of sports.
A lot of sports.
Thank you.
Hey, Reggie. Thank you very much for coming. My name's Russell. I'm a first-year law student and a former body man for a member of Congress, so it's a little PTSD. I lost a bag myself.
You never get over it.
Yeah, no. So in light of that, I'm wondering, you had a lot of experience and a lot of time with incredible men and women, whether it's Pete Roush or the president, obviously, and all these people that you can really soak up a lot from. But I'm wondering how you were able to, or potentially failed, to toe the line between sort of professionalism and seeking out these individuals as, whether it was a mentor or sometimes the president is referred to as like a little brother. So I'm curious how you went about making sure you didn't cross over that and ask an inappropriate question at an inappropriate time, but at the same time still soaked up as much as you possibly could in your time.
I think, and I honestly think I don't think there are any inappropriate questions if they're phrased properly. I remember back in 2008, it's like August, and this is like pre-TARP. And he's like on the phone with Bush like every day, and he's like, they're trying to figure out what they're gonna do about, these banks. And he's like working, it's like a bipartisan effort working to figure this out. And I'm like, we're in the middle of a campaign, and I'm thinking to myself, and I say, sir, like I'm just like confused a bit because, like, in theory, if things get really, really bad right now, like, it would probably make it a lot easier for you to get elected in November. And he goes, no, that's probably like a very fair assessment. And this question is basically going like, this is like a question that's like, so why are you spending so much time talking to like President Bush? And he answers the question. He says, look, you know, like the people who are going to be the most affected by this are going to be not the people who work at the banks, but it's going to be the small businesses that don't have access to credit, that can't make payroll, that can't, you know, go out and, you know, procure whatever supplies and equipment they need in order to provide their services to ultimately like put food on the table of middle-class citizens. So I think in a form of a question, I think that's totally fair. I think there are other scenarios that I probably did not do that great of a job towing the line, but it has less to do with sort of the mentoring aspect and more to do with, you know, like when you are playing golf or basketball or you're competing with somebody, like, you know, when are you like competing against like someone that you're in competition with, and when are they your boss? And I think that's like a very hard thing to get right sometimes. And I've definitely, you know, I've like had to apologize and like, you know, I didn't mean to yell at you about that call, but like I was really like heated at the time. And I do think that, and my biggest point around this too is that there's like no, Coach K used to say this all the time, there's like no such thing as stupid questions. They're just like stupid people who don't ask questions. And it's easy, especially like you guys are like all like probably really smart and experts at whatever it is you're studying and teaching and professing. And, you know, the hard thing to do, I think, is to let someone else know that like you don't know everything, that you know what, like you would like more information about something, that, you know what, I probably could go and do a little more research on this because I'm not really up to speed on it. And I think that that's like where you like have like the most amount of growth in places where you either don't agree with people and you are asking tough and challenging questions and you're having those dialogues, or places where, you know, you're having conversations where you're uncomfortable because you're not necessarily the most educated person on the topic. And I think you can just, I mean, and I think that was, for me, probably the best part about most of my experiences is that, you know, I felt uncomfortable all the time because I was like typically like the least smartest person in most of the meetings.
Last question here.
Hi, my name's Ahelia. I'm an undergraduate student at Wellesley. I was very lucky. I got to work at the Office for Public Engagement at the White House during the fall. And
How far is Wellesley from here?
I came a ways.
Okay.
I wanted to hear you talk. And I saw all the great things that were coming out of the administration, like My Brother's Keeper and the Council for Women and Girls, and all of these really wonderful initiatives. And every day I would, you know, very religiously read Politico. It's a very DC thing to do. And no one was talking about the good work. How does the president deal with the polarization of the media? The fact that people go to the media sources that confirm their views, not the ones that challenge them. How does he deal with the fact that in today's world, the White House press briefing room is really, really not that relevant?
Well, I think there's a couple
I feel
things.
inadequate.
I mean, I think that's probably the reason why people are spending like multi-billion dollars on campaigns, so that they can like basically have their own media outlet. And I also think that too, I think he understands that, look, it's, you know, people, it's competitive. Like the news landscape is more competitive today than it has ever been. And so, look, sometimes that you find yourself when the things that are like really driving click-throughs and subscriptions and viewership are not the warm, fuzzy success stories. And I think that, you know, I think he gets it. I think,
But how do you get people involved if all they hear is the bad stuff, if all they hear is the fighting and not the hope?
Well, I think that is part of the story. That is part of the story about being involved. You know, when you see that there is this much gridlock and fighting and sort of stagnation, it means that like more people need to be involved in the process, and more people need to become, educated and engaged in having their own dialogues in their own communities about these issues. Because ultimately, none of these issues are like won or lost on CNN. They're won and lost in like living rooms and in churches and in town hall meetings and in places like here. This is where it happens right now. I think the media tries to, they try to come up with storylines to help sort of move people in a certain direction, but it's really up to us to dig down deep and to look very analytically at what's going on and what are the things that are important to us, and what are the things that are going to make a difference to us, not just look at the things that are being fed to us. I think that's hard. It's a very hard thing to do. We have short attention spans, and there's a lot of things that are competing for our time and our attention. I'm sure everyone's got 3 devices, and you've got your friends and girlfriend or wife and kids, and it's a hard thing to do. But I think when you get to the core of it, when you get down to sort of the basic needs and necessity, which are, people want a chance to get a good education, have an employment, have long-term security financially and with healthcare, and they want to have the chance to live the American dream. If people feel like they have that opportunity, they'll be engaged and involved, for years to come. But the moment people feel like that thing is no longer attainable, then people become more and more disenchanted, and I think that's also the moment when people have to sort of turn in and dig a little deeper and work a little harder to help get us back on course.
So last question. You've seen up close and personal what it's like to be president. Would you ever run?
For president?
Yes.
No.
Not an advertisement for it.
Look, man, you've seen up and close. Would you run?
I enjoy the view that I have. Anyway, thank you so much, Reggie. Oh, have you been waiting? I'm sorry. We didn't see you at the mic.
I'm sorry. Okay. My name is Malik Jawati. I'm actually a high school senior. So what do you think has been Barack Obama's biggest accomplishment as president?
I think what will ultimately be, I think healthcare will be looked at like the New Deal. I think ACA will be the most historic thing that has happened to our country in a while. I know a lot of people argue otherwise, and I'm sure I can find 100 websites that say the opposite. But me personally, I think hands down, I don't even think there's it's the most important thing that's happened in the last 3 decades.
Well, thank you so much, Reggie Love, for coming to speak to us. And it's called Power Forward, My Presidential Education, if only to read the part about when he catches Reggie with a girl. Barack Obama, and that internship ended up lasting a little bit longer than you thought.
Yeah, so to be totally honest, I was playing football after college. I spent
You did you were
3 months.
You were semi-pro, right? Or
with
you were
the
pro?
Packers, and
Yeah,
I spent
right.
a year with the Cowboys, and my mom had suggested that I take an accounting course my last year of college, and so when I'm in Dallas, I come up with this calculation of like how many snaps I would have to play in order to never have to work again. And when I finally calculated the number, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to make that many snaps, so I should look for a different career.
I love that.
Yeah.
So he starts looking for a different career. He decides, I'm going to go, into finance, make money, right? So you're on your way like up to like Goldman or something in New York.
Well, this is kind of, and I don't know how many remember, this is like sort of the golden age of, iBanking then, which, it's 2005, 2006, and, I had classmates who were making just as much in their like annual bonuses as I was making like in a whole year playing football. And I was like, and they're going to make that for 30 years.
Yep.
Well, maybe not for 30, but, they made it for a while.
So you're looking at a lot of money, money signs going up to New York. You're thinking, I'm going to make it big, make a lot of money for, and then you stop in Washington and you intern for Barack Obama, which does not, let's face it, pay well.
Yeah.
Does it pay at all?
So I was a staff assistant, and I don't know how many people here have worked in a member's office on the Hill.
So it's 2, 3.
2. So, and there's someone in the back. So in a congressional office, you've got like the member of Congress, you've got like a chief of staff and a senior advisor and director of scheduling, legislative director, legislative correspondent,
communications director,
communications assistant, speechwriter, and then there's like staff assistant, and then there's intern.
Yeah.
And so I was a staff assistant, and I think when I started, I made maybe $28,000 a year, and I lived in D.C., which is even, I don't know how that even worked out. I don't really, I don't think I was actually I must have been in the red, and I got there and things were. What I noticed was that there was some.
Good afternoon and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. I'm Maggie Williams, Director of the Institute of Politics here at Harvard. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Jay Newton Small. Jay is a correspondent for Time magazine. She has been on assignment for Time in Iran, Iraq, Jordan, the UAE, Ethiopia, Haiti, Indonesia, Australia, Canada, and Europe. Closer to home, she covered the 2008 presidential campaign, traveling with then presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Newton Small has covered the White House, Congress, and the 2012 Republican presidential campaign. Before joining Time, she was a reporter for Bloomberg News. It is our good fortune to have Jay Newton Small as a fellow at the Institute of Politics, where in addition to managing a very busy schedule, she is writing a book which has as its working title, Broad Influence. It is my honor to introduce Jay Newton Small.
Something special about what was going on there. And I would go, and Lauren Kidwell probably remembers this, who's here, is that Senator Obama would have these town halls every Thursday. He and Dick Durbin would have a town hall, and people from Illinois would come and visit. And the line that he would always say that stuck with me was that, I would rather do what's right for the American people than worry about being reelected. It's like if I do the right thing and I don't get reelected, and I'm fine with that. And I thought that was just like a very, it was a concept that I kind of thought never happened in politics. And I thought when I was in college, I studied political science. I wrote papers on how, the correlation between dollars raised and who wins a presidential election or a senatorial election. And it was just a refreshing point of view. And so as a staff assistant, a lot of people say, well, how did you go from staff assistant to, personal aide for the president? And it's like it's a long journey. And to be totally honest, when people see Barack Obama today, they're like, oh my God, the 44th president.
So I'm really excited tonight to be here with my old friend Reggie Love, who I was just chatting with Reggie. I think I wrote the first profile of you ever in print in 2007. Yeah.
Right before Christmas.
Yeah, and it was the Time magazine in 2007 for Christmas, and you were so nervous about it. Yeah. You were like, don't write anything mean about me.
Yeah. Yeah. I said that I didn't want to take away, I was like, this campaign's not about me, this is about Barack Obama and the message, but I think Robert Gibbs his point was it will make him look more. It will humanize the candidate.
Is that what Gibbs told you?
That's
That's how Gibbs sold it.
That's how he sold it. Because I was like, why is Jay keep bothering me about this writing this article?
Well, and I started it all because now you have an amazing book that's just come out. So let me introduce Reggie before we start all the banter. Reggie Love you were a basketball and a football star. At Duke.
Star. I played. I was on the team.
He was a star. He was totally a star. And after graduating from Duke, you were going to go to New York. You were kind of on your way up to New York, and he decided he would stop in Washington D.C. and intern, for the summer, and in this office of this new kind of senator from Illinois named